जंतर मंतर पर जो कुछ भी हुआ देश और दुनिया ने देखा है। कुछ शरारती बच्चों ने भद्दी भद्दी गालियां बोली। मुझे तो गालियां दी गई, मेरी स्वर्गीय माता को भी गालियां दी गई। न जाने कितना भद्दा स्वरूप था।
Can you be jailed for abusive language? What does Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita actually say about it? And most importantly, if PM has decided to forgive the people who abused him, can the legal action still be taken? Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and in today's session we are going to understand that what does our penal code say about the fact that if somebody is using abusive language, what actions can be taken for them, and if there are any actions at all as per the prescribed code that can be taken. So the answer here is a between yes and no. So is it conditional? Yes, kind of. So let us try to understand that where abusive language stands in form of criminal offences. So let us begin with understanding that why we are looking at abusive language as legal action related to it. So recently what happened when CGP protest was unfolding at Jantar Mantar, a lot of remarks were made about our Prime Minister as well. Unfortunately, a lot of those remarks were not only abuses but they were derogatory as well. So in this context, a zero FIR has been registered against a 25-year-old woman. This is not the only FIR that has been registered for the abusive and derogatory remarks. There are multiple we see across the nation. And that is exactly what has led to the question that when we are looking at this legal action of FIR, can it be just based on the fact that a person is using derogatory or abusive language? So the answer here, as I said, is something very conditional. If certain conditions are fulfilled, then yes, legal action can be taken. If certain conditions are not fulfilled, then it is not liable for legal action. So let us try to understand based on Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Now when we are talking about BNS, we should clearly know that Indian Penal Code has been replaced by Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, and today we are going to talk about certain sections of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, starting with section 352. Now when we are looking at section 352, it clearly says that when we are looking for criminal offence in this context of using abusive language, we have to look into two things. First, the intention of the person, that if he wanted to do it, so if he is intentionally insulting another person. Second, this should also come with that if the insult is for the intention of something like creating violence, creating public disorder, or breaching the peace or commissioning of other offence. So if there is intent and the purpose of intent is anything like this, that is when section 352 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita can consider abusive language as a criminal offence. Now you have to clearly understand here that when we are looking at this picture, there are two essential ingredients in this picture. The first one here is the intentional insult. And second one is what can happen. That means what is the likelihood in terms of breach of peace. If this comes into picture, this is an offence which will attract 2 years of imprisonment or fine, or there is a possibility it can attract both. Now why I am reiterating the same fact? Because simply using offensive language is not enough. That I am not provoking you to use one, I am just explaining that if you are abusing someone without any intention at all and maybe in a closed room, that will not be a criminal offence. To this be a criminal offence, the prosecution has to prove these both of things, then only the punishment comes into the picture. But this is not the only section which deals with offensive language or abusive language. There are multiple sections which are present across. For example, we are looking at section 351. In a situation where there is criminal intimidation through threats, section 351 comes into the picture. There is proper punishment of 2 years. Serious threat if exists, then the punishment can be extended up to 7 years. Let's just say section 356. Defamation through false allegation of harming reputation. In this context, the punishment can be provided as per BMS defaming provisions. Now, why I am explaining all this? Again, we have to go back to the example where we talked about when we are looking at use of abusive language alone, that is not something that can be regarded as a criminal offense. So, for example, if there are 2 people in a given room and if abusive language has been used, that might not be a criminal offense. But let's just say 2 people out on the road, one person trying to criminally intimidate the other person into doing something. He's threatening the other person. For example, where he is being threatened, in that situation, section 351 does come into the picture. If we are looking into defamation, if somebody is hurling abuses to ensure that the other person is defamed, in that particular case, section 356 does come into the picture. And in a case if there is use of words or gestures which are basically insulting the modesty, dignity of a woman, we have section 79. So there is use of abuse is not an automatic offense. It is the context in which it is used that will decide the offense, and the section of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita that will be used. I hope we have a clarity on the fact that when it comes into the picture, when Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita is dealing with it, it is in a given context. If the context is established by the prosecution, then definitely the criminal offense, the legal action can be taken in this context. Now, this is where we are continuously saying that this is something that seems like something a little more conditional and contextual as well. So, when we are looking at conditionality and contextuality, what is the threshold that we are continuously talking about? So, when we are understanding from the perspective of the court, from the perspective where the judgment has to come, we have to understand that court has generally distinction between 2 things. Was it just a mere offensive speech or a criminal conduct which was involved? As I explained, context is something of great essence in such legal actions, such judicial decisions, judicial interpretations as well. So, when we are looking at mere offensive speech, be it rude language, bad manners, or we are looking at insults or heated exchange, that is not criminal by themselves. But when it is combined with provoking violence, disturbing public order, intimidating people, that's when it comes into criminal conduct. And the main context based on which judgments are given is more context rather than the words. So words might be abusive, but if the context isn't, that is when it will not be liable for punishment at all. So when we are looking at the same abusive words, if they are spoken alone in a room, if they are spoken in a political rally, if they are spoken during a violent mob situation, inside parliament, all of these different situations will have different legal consequences based on the context that is set up. And that is what brings us to another conversation here, because when we are looking at this threshold, it shows us that there is not a very clear defined line. So how do we distinguish between freedom of speech and criminal liability? So if let's not talk about abusive language, maybe somebody is trying to express criticism and that probably might seem insightful, but it might not be. So in this context, where is the line drawn? But before that, let me answer a very important question for you, which we started the conversation with. Can PM forgive? So in this situation, as you see that our PM has gone ahead and said he forgives all the students. So his appeal can be taken into context. But once the FIR has been registered, there is a proper judicial process that is followed. So whoever might have got the FIR registered, they might decide to retract it based on the appeal. But if they do not decide to do it, then the process for it is laid out the same. PM does not have any special pardoning powers as such. Now, when we are talking about this bigger debate in front of us, the constitutional position, I think we all are very clear, especially based on Article 19(1)(a), which talks about freedom of speech. Now, it not only mentions freedom of speech, Article 19(2) also talks about that how there can be reasonable restrictions. So, when we are looking about that we are able to express and we are able to say things, it doesn't mean that we are not keeping in mind the decency and morality. For example, yes, you have the freedom to use your stick and walk around, but if that stick starts hurting others, then it's not just your fundamental right, it is also about other people's fundamental right in the picture as well. So when we have talking about fundamental right, especially in this context, freedom of speech and expression, we have to remember that there is this place for reasonable restrictions, and this is not coming from any political party. This is something that has been given by our constitution itself. And this is where the debate gets clearer. Why it gets clearer? Because this is where the line has to be drawn. When we are talking about the blurred line which is not giving clarity, we have to understand that these are the reasonable restrictions that we might have to place on our own, and if the state places the same, it is not something constitutionally wrong. Because freedom of speech does give us the right, but it does not include any sort of criminal intimidation, defamation, incitement at all. And when we are looking at the provisions of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, we can clearly see that there is a way to balance free expression and maintenance of public order and protection of individual rights, through which the context is established. Now that was all from my side. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section, because I would really like to know, what do you think? Is abusive language something that should be punished for without context as well? Or do you think that BNS is rightly placed, everything is going right here? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be leaving you here with a very simple prelims practice question. Let me know the answer to this as well in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.